welcome back to Dr. Introspect TV, and it's your host, Dr. Introspect, and I'm back. So that's our intro. Today, I'm bringing to you one of my favorite genres, actually crime, detective, psychological thrillers, murder mysteries. I'm going to be talking to you today about The Undoing. Stay tuned. Alright, so we're back. If you see me looking down, I'm looking at my trusty notes as usual, and I'm going to be doing a thematic analysis as per usual, looking at the human dynamic aspects and things we can pick up from here that we can learn and apply to our lives or apply to other situations as we come in contact with people in the real world. Jumping right in, I have to say, when I saw Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman on this one, I was like, okay, I think this is really going to be good. Like, these are really great actors. And fun fact, Hugh Grant was actually scheduled to be on the cast for the Hannibal series, but it went to someone else. I'm guessing billing issues, maybe he was charging more or something. So seeing him playing a sociopathic type of character here, which is not so far away from the psychopathic character of Hannibal in that movie and the whole franchise and series, seeing him do it here, I feel like he could have pulled off that character really well. Also, there's actually a book that this movie is somewhat jumping off from, but it's not quite similar. So if you guys have read the book, let me know and give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Speaking of thoughts, please comment and subscribe if you haven't. Like this video, it will really help me stay motivated to bring more content for you guys here, and it will help YouTube to be able to suggest videos like this to other people like you that might like this but haven't come across it yet. So please give me a favor, give me a thumbs up if you like this, and leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this show or ideas for other things that you want me to bring to you. As you know, this is basically like a baby channel, so it's basically self-directed at this point. I come up with all the ideas. Once in a while I get like recommendations, which I appreciate from you awesome followers and subscribers. So I would definitely love to see this be more of a community where you guys are engaged and you guys are participating actively. So with that being said, I'm gonna dive right in. Okay, so first thing first, I want to comment on the diversity that is apparent in this show. I could see that the defendants and the lawyers were females, and that was really nice to see. One of them was actually black, and it was just really diverse. There were Latino characters, white Caucasians, blacks, and it kind of mirrors what you see in the real world today, as that there are different people of different races and all across, in the world. Big points for them. That's usually something I give Netflix points for, but HBO did a good job with that. So some of the concepts I'm going to be talking about are going to be regards to the marriage of the main characters. So everything I'm going to be talking about will be based on these two characters, Hugh Grant playing the role of Jonathan Fraser and Nicole Kidman playing the role of Grace Fraser. I'm going to be looking at the marriage. I'm going to be analyzing Grace Fraser's character, that's Nicole Kidman's character, and I'm going to be looking at the Jonathan Fraser character as well, the kind of disorder that he suffers from. I'm also going to be looking at the childhood trauma that the child Henry has to deal with as a result of this circumstance, and other miscellaneous points I would bring them up in the end. So diving right in, straight up with a marriage. when you see Jonathan and his wife, they just give you that all-American vibe, that American dream of success. They both went to like Harvard. We're not sure about him, but she says she met him there. And you know, she is this well-accomplished clinical psychologist, has her own practice. They are living this lavish life in New York City, and their kid gets to go to this elite school, and he is a pediatric oncologist. So like that's a lot of training, and you can imagine all the money that that's bringing into the family. And what I really admired about the marriage, jumping right in, was just their bond and their openness and their communication. I saw that right off, and if not for the title, so the title of the series is a dead giveaway. You see this great family that looks great outside, you're watching it inside, it also looks like it's great inside, and then everything just falls apart, right? So that was something to admire about the marriage. But like, as you see often, even when you look at celebrity couples and you're like, couple goals, you're not in it. And even the people that are in it often are not seeing the whole picture, which was the case for Grace and her son Henry. You think you have this awesome life, awesome marriage, awesome family, partner, everything, and then it all comes crashing down because there are many secrets and there's so many things happening behind the scenes that you're not aware of. So something to bear in mind. When I think a lesson from there is, when you're admiring couples and you're wishing and you're comparing yourself to their situation, you never really know what's going on in there, okay? Second thing, I'm gonna look at Grace's character right away. And with Grace, this was something I actually could pick up on episode 1 and 2, even before the show kind of explains itself. So this is one of those shows that really explains itself, and you don't necessarily have to have a psychiatric or clinical background to really understand what's going on. So Grace has this Forage repetition compulsion going on. I have repeated that a couple of times on this channel, and that's essentially where you are repeating cycles from your childhood, either things you've experienced or things you saw happen in your dynamic with your parents. So Grace's dad was an unfaithful man, and he strayed a lot, and he would come back to the mom, buy her gifts and things. And I don't know if he was able to create an illusion of a happy family for Grace's child to see and want to emulate in her life as an adult, or if Grace just chose to see what she wanted to see. And I'm going to discuss that as I go on. So she is essentially repeating this thing. Now, we don't know if Grace has a pattern of picking guys that are like her husband in this particular show. They don't really give us a background of Grace's childhood and her teenage years and things like that. So we don't know, but just looking at this as it is, it looks like that's what's going on. And her father actually made note of this. And he said that when he met her husband, he didn't like him. No reasons why, but perhaps now that everything is unfolding is because he could spot one bullshitter. You know, they say a bullshitter can spot another bullshitter. So that's probably what was going on there. He could tell that he is putting on a good show because he put on a good show and he is selling it real well, kind of thing. And he said, are you sure that when you thought he was a great guy, you didn't just tell him everything you wanted and he morphed into that, you know? And that's a warning I tend to give people when they come to me for like relationship advice. Don't go and tell people what you want in a man or a woman. If they don't even have to have disorders to do what Jonathan was able to do. People like Jonathan, when they want you, they're not necessarily caring about whether you want them to. They're not caring about your desires and your aspirations. I'm going to get deep down into Jonathan's character and his disorder as I go on. But you have to be careful, and people that don't have disorders too can do that. They just want you, and they don't care about your own goals, your dreams, and what you want as a person. They don't see you as a person, so all they care about is what they want, and they would just morph into what you've described. You say you want a guy that is into fitness, they start going to the gym because you like a guy that's into fitness. They just change who they are to become what you want. And her father was like, are you sure this is not what he did? He didn't morph into somebody that you had described that you wanted. When the father went on to explain how the gifts he bought his mom were a penance, it just took my mind to a clip that went around, I think in year 2017, that tried to shed light on the whole domestic abuse thing. So he would beat her and he would buy her roses, and the whole quote from that clip was, I got flowers today. You hear I got flowers today, and you already know it's like penance for what he has done. So her dad said he bought her a lot of jewelry and bought her a lot of things, and he said the wife never wore the jewelry, that he feels the jewelry was probably like poison. And of course it would be like poison to her soul, because every time she sees it, she would be reminded of the fact that it came because he strayed away and stuff. He admitted, and to her shock, she was really surprised that, oh my god, my dad wasn't this great man that I thought he was. And her dad was like, if your idea of what our happy marriage was based on what I and your mom had, then oh my god, you were like doomed for failure, and unfortunately her idea of marriage was based on those foundations of her parents. Another concept that I could see happening a lot with Grace was the whole thing of cognitive bias. Cognitive biases. There are different kind of biases, and I like to refer to the work of Daniel Kahneman on Thinking Fast and Slow. I will leave it down here below. He does a good job describing different forms of biases. And with cognitive biases, you're essentially, there's one specifically they talked about, the confounding one, where you're looking for things that just validate the original convictions you have. And I think that is something that she was prone to. And the thing about biases is, just because you are well educated, you have a psychological degree, doctorate, or you're a psychiatrist, whatever, you've published like 1 million journal articles, it doesn't stop you from having these biases. And you could see that was something that she struggled with here. Like, you're watching it and you're thinking like, at what point are you going to see? Even her father was like, can't you see? Are you really going to take this man back? This is not what you need. This is not what your son needs. Her friend is like, look, I think your husband did it. Like, it just seems like everybody else can see this and she can't, And I'm like, is her desire to want to maintain this status quo of whatever she thinks her marriage and family is trumping the desire or willingness to see the truth for what it is? And but I can understand, for people that are in it, and she says it to her clients, and even the lawyer repeats it, when you're in the middle of something, you're in the middle of an abusive marriage, abusive relationship, toxic, and everybody else is telling you this is not okay, you're in the middle of it, you're going to be making excuses for the person because you can't really see it clearly. So I can understand that, but still it was kind of bewildering because of her background. I mean, she is trained at Harvard, and it's like, are you telling me you really can't see this? And that leads us to ask the question of, is she a good therapist? I'm looking at the scenes of her clients in her office. I personally feel like she didn't really do a good job of validating the experience of some of them. For example, the first female client that was complaining about the abuse of her partner, she could have still done what she did, but still acknowledge that yes, what was happening was abuse at the same time. But when I think about the way this show unfolded and everything, I bet, in fact, from episode 2, I knew that her husband did it. I knew, and I was thinking to myself, how is this going to affect her practice? People are going to be wondering, how good of a therapist are you if you cannot tell that you were married to a killer for over 15 years? You lived with him and you were married to him, and you weren't able to identify that. So I feel like it might actually affect her career. It might affect her credibility, and as you could see in the final episode in the court case, her credibility really came into question as to how she's able to speak to how loving and caring and empathetic her husband is, but at the same time she had somehow profiled him to have personality disorder. And I was really wondering, like, what do you think? I mean, do you think she's a great therapist, and do you think this might affect her job? So that's a question I have there. Then finally, with regards to the court case, throughout the show, you as someone watching it all happen, you can't really tell if she had the plan all along to do what she did in the end, because it looked like she was really by her husband's side throughout the whole thing. Yes, she's in pain and she feels bad and everything, but I can't really tell. So and there are times where it looks like, where she finds the hammer, when he blames the son and tries to blame the son and say, you sure our son didn't do it, and things like that. There are moments like that where it seemed like, okay, she's seeing him for who he was, but then there are other moments, like when she went back to sleep with him in their own house, and she went back and had sex and came back the next morning. You get confused. So when she decided to testify, it didn't really seem like, and she even cried on the stand, like it didn't look like she planned to ruin him like that. But if she did, then she really did a good job playing along the whole time. But you watching it, you still can't tell if that was her intention all along. Thinking about Grace's parenting, I think she was a great mom. I liked the relationship she had with Henry. They were communicative, just like she was with her husband. And she did well to often validate Henry's feelings and allow him to express himself and things like that. And even when the husband would do something that is out of line, I liked how she would still go back to him and soothe his inner child. I mean, he's still a child, so that inner child that would become his inner child when he grows up is really in its formative years. So having someone come to you and validate and say, okay, that wasn't okay for daddy to do, daddy shouldn't have made you responsible for keeping his secret and things like that, I really appreciated that. And that's something you can take away from here, that you can translate to your own parenting if you're already a parent or you plan on being one. Now let's dive right into the really dark part of this whole review on this show. Jonathan Fraser. Jonathan Fraser is textbook NPD. I don't know how they throw that word around a bit here in the last episode, and then her friend uses the word sociopath right about episode 2 or 3, and I'm thinking, yes, it is really, really obvious. He is very charming. He has a way of disarming people, and whatever, like, he's so charming, he has a way of disarming people. He is so entitled, he really thinks he can have his way, and it's just, I mean, people that have this type of disorder and psychopaths, they are often attracted to places of power. In medicine, for example, it's not exactly the same power as a politician, where you'd find a lot of them, or CEOs, but feeling like somebody's life lies in your hands, and having maybe the parents, for example, look at you with so much adoration and adulation because you're saving their child, is definitely a power that some people can feed off from. And it's not surprising that he picked a field like that. In the show, when the wife was arguing about how he is empathetic and good when she was on the stand testifying, I couldn't help but also like make counter arguments in my own mind, counter arguments that the prosecutor eventually made when she said, isn't a lack of empathy part of the traits of someone that has this disorder? And the mother saying he could neither feel guilt nor grief, isn't that also a measure of that as well? And I was waiting for that to come up, so I was really glad that that came up. So I think he picked a career choice like that because it just made him feel he had all that adoration and adulation, that their lives are in his hands and the parents look at him like a god for saving their kids. But also at the same time, parents of children like this are often in vulnerable states. So people with disorders like this that like to prey on vulnerable people, you know, in the real world, they are probably coming to you when you're just straight out from a breakup, you're vulnerable, you're hurt, you just had an accident, you just lost your job, have low self-esteem, you don't feel the best of yourself. That's when you tend to come across people like this and let them in. Every day we meet people like this, okay? They're not like in a cave somewhere and like nobody sees them. They're at your work, they're at your school. People like this are everywhere. Now, what happens is the kind of quality of a person that lets such people into their life. They are often always vulnerable people, just like the case of Jeffrey Epstein. So I think Elena, I don't know who came on to who, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was the one that first made the move on the woman that died. And she was obviously vulnerable, her child could die, and that led to the affair. He was also a pathological liar. Like, lies were dropping like bombs, one after the other. And as these lies were coming to light, I was looking at Grace like, come on, what more do you need? What other information are you searching for? This is one of those situations where I say you don't need to wait to see the whole picture. Sometimes it could be too late. Sometimes you could find out and it could literally be life or death. Like, you don't need these kind of like delay wait periods, like go, leave, run. You know, when you pick up things like this in people. Jonathan created this image of him being this life-saving doctor to children, saves lives, you know. But even the guy that told his wife, the doctor at the hospital, that he was fired and it was under disciplinary actions and things like this, he told her that he thinks he could be a psychopath, that he had narcissistic traits, that it was clear, it was obvious. He treated the hospital like his throne room, like everybody worshipped him. And he also mentioned that the affair wasn't hidden, so they used to mess around obviously in front of people. And it's just that whole entitlement, that feeling like he can do it and get away with it, you know. And even when he waved in front of his child and he did it in front of the school, they tend to make those kind of bold moves, like they're not scared, like they feel like they can do whatever they want, and you know, nothing is going to happen. So it's still that entitlement going on. I think him doing what he did in front of his child's school was deliberate. It wasn't an accident, you know. Obviously the doctor said he was also displaying such things at the hospital blazingly, that he was having an affair, and it was just, you know, the pathological lying. He had been fired from his job for months and he kept that a secret. Like, how do you let that kind of man back into your life? Like, the lies just kept on coming up. And then something else people like this do, when you question them about the other woman, they'll tell you that she's crazy. And when he dropped the crazy bomb, I was like, sure. He's like, I think she's crazy. You know, I think she's crazy. She was possessive. And he's making up all the stories. Obviously, the woman is dead. So Grace can go back and ask her questions like, is it true? Is it not? But there were questions about whether she was being treated for something. It never came to light in the show whether she was being treated for something. Elena. And I feel like she probably had something, because the way the kind of things she did, and the lack of boundaries, and she would be naked in front of Grace, knowing that she's sleeping with Grace's husband, but Grace doesn't know. She would, there were kind of things she was doing. I don't know the type of word to use to call it, it's not coming to mind right now, but it was deliberate, and I don't feel like it's something someone perfectly healthy would do. So whatever it was she had, it wasn't mentioned, so we don't know. Another place you could see the lack of empathy was how he was able to have sex with this woman, murder her, and just kill her in this brutal way, and then come back home and have sex with his wife. I'm like, that just goes to show you, even when he was saying he loved her, it was an act. But people like this, they're very great at putting on shows. Could you notice how he could just cry on a dime? Like, he would just go to a corner, make something the subject about him, and then start crying, like on a drop of a hat. Like, he could just cry immediately. And I'm like, how can you say you loved this woman and you beat her up like this, and you were able to go back and have sex with your wife the same night? And it's just horrible. Even regular people that cheat on their spouses, they're often not really feeling like having sex with their partner, because if they really love the other person and stuff. How he was able to do that, it just really shows the lack of empathy. He never loved this woman. It's very important you know this. People with these disorders are not capable of love. What they do is possess you like an object. They are not capable of love. So when he goes on about how he loved her, that was so disgusting, because we're talking about a murder. That was when he went on air on TV with his lawyer, and all of a sudden he turns it around and makes this murder about him. And he's like, something you guys don't understand is that I loved this woman and I've lost someone I loved. And I'm like, how are we going to turn this murder investigation into you losing someone you love? And that moment, I'm looking at Grace like, Grace, this is another indication. He's with you, his wife, and he's telling the whole world that he loved this woman, and he still loves her. So what are you what are you doing there? And then he makes up for it by pretending that it's a different type of love than the love I have for my wife. It doesn't in any way affect the love I have for my wife, but it's all an act. It's all an act. He never loved her. That's key for you to remember. And he doesn't love his wife either. He's very big on the image. People like this are very focused on the image. They want people, the story they're telling the world. And his story is that he's this great guy that is a good family-loving dad, husband, lifesaver of children, And even when he spoke about Elena, she was blackmailing him, and she was doing this and she was doing that, and that was the gratitude she had for him saving her life. That was another God complex I picked on right there. Like, what do you mean by that was her gratitude? Like, it makes no sense. That was her gratitude, He was also very manipulative, which is something these kind of people do. They're very manipulative. And if you see the web of people that he had spinning all around Grace to keep her in the dark. He had Grace's dad, and they all didn't know, of course. So he had Grace's dad. He had borrowed $500,000 from. Imagine that. Like, I'm like, Grace, he basically stole from you, and are you really going to take him back? And the dad, Grace's dad, was really upset about that, because he was like, he thought he was helping his daughter, and he knew his daughter is not the type of person to ask, so he didn't say anything. And he had her best friend as well, the lawyer that he brought in to help with the case in the hospital when he was facing disciplinary actions. And because it was attorney-client privilege, she couldn't tell Grace either. So he knew what he was doing. He could have gotten any other lawyer, but he got her friend as well to keep her in the dark. So these people will often play their play and dance in this very close to home way. Like you're so close to knowing about it. Like they're the kind of people that will have affair with your siblings, with your best friend. Like it's so close to home, so dangerous. But then the power they get out of it is knowing that you don't know. So it makes them feel powerful, that you're like in their mind that you're dumb and you don't know, and they're spinning all these circles all around you, and that's where they get that power from. And it's so disgusting, by the way. He does the same thing with his kid, and I could have handled using the best friend and the dad, but then using your own child, that was a line for me. Like, you're using your own child, and then Henry felt obligated. And with these people, they tend to feed on this obligation thing. Henry felt obligated to keep his secret for him. And then he now started to feel this responsibility, which is something that happens to kids, where when things happen, because kids are not really well developed, they tend to have this view like everything that happens in the world is as a result of them. So he's feeling like Eleanor died because he didn't tell his mom about the affair, and maybe she would have still been alive, But he wasn't even the only one. Her dad also felt the same way as well, that when he borrowed this money, maybe if he had said something to you, maybe you would have investigated, and then you would have found out about this other woman, and maybe she would have been alive. So you have all these people taking responsibility in one way or the other for a death that was not in any way their fault, but the perpetrator continues to maintain this innocence that he didn't do it. And it reminds me a lot of Ted Bundy. Had that charisma and everything, and he was defending himself, making a spectacle out of the American court, and insisting that he didn't murder those victims, which is not so far from what he was doing. And I was also utterly disgusted by how he likened his sister that died at the age of 4 to a dog. That is really something that anyone would have picked up on, like that is the absence of respect for her humanity, that this child died, and the way he just tucked away that memory was that he equated her being to an animal, a dog. That was also another red flag. I was thinking to myself that, come on, Grace, this is another indication that, something is not right with this guy, and you should not be helping him, and you should not get back together with him or anything like that. That was just utterly disgusting. And these kind of people, when they have issues with their friends or family or whatever, as you could see, he was basically an outcast in his family. Not that they cast him out, but he left and put it behind him and never spoke about it again, and made it seem like they'll be telling you things like, my family doesn't like me, and they'll make up all kinds of stories why you can't go to their family, you can't meet their friends, that's another red flag for you to watch out for. Now, I'm not saying that they cannot still take you to their family and pull a whole wool over your eyes, but this is a really strong one, and he's making all the stories about how they hate him, and it's a shame that it took her almost 17 years to actually call the mother and investigate exactly what happened, and she could have found out sooner. So I think the lesson there is for you to do your own due diligence. Do your own due diligence, meet people, talk to people. Don't just take a person's word for it. Don't just take how they describe themselves. They tell you, I'm a kind guy, I'm honest, I'm a kind girl, I'm honest. Talk to their friends. Now, you might talk to their friends and they have their friends in on it, and they would project the same image that they want to project to you. But definitely, it's still better than just taking everything they say as gospel and going in blind. So towards the end, when he's kidnapping his child and trying to take him to Canada across the border, it looks like he has snapped, which is something you're familiar with in movies, where it seems like, if you've watched Criminal Minds, they have a pattern, they're killing, they're doing what they do, and then they just get out of control, maybe pressure, maybe trigger, something happens and they say they snapped. And it looked like in that moment in the car, like he snapped, like he just didn't care anymore. What happened was that at that point, they had pulled the mask over. When you pull the mask and you see who is really behind the mask of people like this people with this NPD, or sometimes psychopaths or whatever, and the criminal ones, because it's not all psychopaths that are killing people, all right? We have psychopaths that are great surgeons, you know, they have that low neuroticism that is required to work in high stress, high pressure environments, and they do great things for people, okay? But for these kind of ones that are wearing a mask and they are killing people and they're doing all this kind of stuff, when that mask slips, then it's game over. Then they can literally do anything. In that court, they had exposed him to be someone that is the opposite of all the image he had created. People like this are very big on image. They're very big on creating this great image of, for example, him being this great loving father, doctor, and among all the mirrors in the world. So for people like this, they don't have a sense of self, and they get their sense of self-worth from how everybody else sees them. And so everybody's like a mirror for them. Among all the pairs of eyes in the world, the most important pair is his son. So when his son looks at him and says, "Dad, you murdered that woman," in the car as they're driving, it's like that was like the final, that was like really, really game over. Like, I can't even get my son. And if you notice, when he got arrested, everybody was already speculating that maybe he killed her or whatever. Even his wife was feeling some type of way. He was so pressuring her to bring the son to the prison so that he could talk to the son. Because yes, everybody's opinion of him matters, but the most important opinion was his child. And if his child could see him for what he really was and not this image he was painting, then it's game over. And that was why that whole spectacle of him going to the bridge and wanting to jump and all that was happening, because it was like everybody now knows who he really is and what he really is. What happened with the killing? I'm gonna explain why Elena died to you guys. Did he snap? No, he did not snap. It wasn't a snap at all. It's not a snap, and I don't like that movies tend to project this whole idea that these people just snap and kill you or beat you or whatever. And the father said that. Grace's dad said it, that if someone could, like a snap, you know, normal people can just get angry, hit someone, or get angry, or even cheat. But to kill someone in that kind of way, that is not a human behavior. That is not just a snap. And I agree. The reason Elena died is because she dared to challenge him. That was what happened. Elena assumed that she's having an affair with a normal person. When two normal people have an affair, it is mutual and it is consensual and there is reciprocity. In healthy relationships, even healthy affairs, there is reciprocity, mutuality, and respect. So there's that equality as well. She felt that she was in a partnership with someone where she has equal rights and equal power in the dynamic. What she didn't understand is that she wasn't a human being in this relationship. She was an object. She was basically being used for his sexual desires or power plays as well, because having this secret that his wife doesn't know about that's happening so close to home, and this wife in her open communication is coming home and telling him about this woman, and he knows who the woman is. Like, all that stuff is giving him some kind of fuel, and it's fueling him, and there's a kind of gratification he gets from it. So she was just a tool and a toy, not a person. That was her mistake. She thought that she was a person. So when she kept pushing and telling him, "Oh, your son is gonna be a great brother for our daughter," you know, projecting this future image, and you know, trying to insist that their relationship really progresses or something, he got angry. He's like, no, you're never gonna see my wife again. And he starts hitting her face, and she's like, no, you love me, you're not gonna hit me, you're not gonna do anything to me. She doesn't understand that he doesn't love her, he's not capable of love, and everything they have shared is a lie, and he was using her essentially. So he beat her the way abusers do, hitting her face on the wall repeatedly for her to learn her lesson. And like a normal human being will do, for most people, if someone hits you, you're gonna want to hit them back, because it's like, you're not just gonna hit me. So she grabs the hammer to try to maybe challenge him or something, and he uses it to smash her head repeatedly and kills her. So that was the height of it, that first of all you challenge this thing thinking you could come here and make demands, and I've already beat your face and you didn't get it. Now I'm going to kill you, because like, I'm really gonna show you. So no, he didn't snap, it was deliberate, and I think he actually enjoyed doing it. Yes, that was really a warning right there. I am above you. With people like this, you cannot have equality, reciprocity, respect in any kind of interaction with them. They're here and you're here. And that was the message he wanted her to know. And he deformed her body in that kind of way to dehumanize her deliberately. So that's definitely something. So yeah, I spent most of the time talking about Jonathan's character, because that's basically what this whole movie is kind of based on. And now I just want to touch on Henry's trauma briefly. I believe that he would probably have to get some therapy. The amount of stress and trauma that he has undergone, watching his dad try to kill himself, having to hide the hammer so his dad doesn't get caught, having to keep this secret that he knew that if a wife was involved with Elena. I mean, all those kind of things. And with people like his dad that is extremely manipulative, he probably felt like if he didn't do it, maybe his dad wouldn't love him or something like that. Because when they were at the dining table and the father threw a fit because the son mentioned about the dog that died and he left the table, that was just unnecessary. You're an adult, you're not a child, but obviously people like this tend to make things about them all the time, because they have to be the center of attention of everything, you know. And you could see it over and over again. He always somehow makes himself the center of attention of everything. And a part of me wondered if he did that as punishment for the son telling the mother about him with being with Elena in front of the school. I felt like it was part of a punishment, like you shouldn't have said something and now you've said something and now look what happened. And it's very, very horrible for parents to put their children in that kind of situation. So I do hope, I know this is all fiction, but if this was real life, he would definitely need therapy. Even the mom would need therapy as well. That's really all I have for you with the analysis of all three characters. I spent most of my time with Jonathan because that's who the main story was about. I did enjoy the suspense of this story. I think it was really good, although I knew how it would end. What would have been great is if we somehow found out that it was the wife that did it instead. But then some people would think it's the typical scorned woman type story. So I get it. More of the focus was to shed light on this type of criminal aspects of a disorder like this. So I can appreciate that. Something that was confusing though was the nature of the flashbacks. So the flashback memories, especially the sex scenes between Elena and Jonathan, or just scenes with Elena, and there were times, like there was a scene where Elena was kissing Grace. I couldn't tell whose memories they were. Was that Grace's memory or was that Jonathan's memory? At a point in time, I started to wonder if they were both in on it and maybe they had like an affair with her and something went bad and one of them killed her or something. There were a lot of possibilities for how the story could go as I was watching it, but Obviously the straight line one was Jonathan, and I saw all the signs of him being guilty, being the one. Everything was there really. It turning out to really be him wasn't a shock. It wasn't surprising. It wasn't like this big reveal. It followed a sequential course that was very predictable, but I still enjoyed it. So that's really all I have for you so far. It was dark, not too dark. I have seen darker. In fact, I wanted to bring Hannibal to you guys, but I wasn't sure if it was too dark. Maybe you guys are okay in the gray area, not full black. So let me know if you want me to bring that to you though, the TV show analysis. I'd be happy to. And like I said before, if you like this video, please comment and like and subscribe. Please share this video with people you think might learn from this. I like to make videos like this because I feel like there are many ways you can learn about yourself and learn about people. And you can meet people in the real world. How many people will you meet? Or you can study characters, and I like to study characters. And I bring the lessons to you so you don't have to worry about memorizing them as you enjoy the entertainment that is your show or movie. So with that, I bring you to the end of this segment, and I will see you in the next one. I will miss you terribly. Bye.